8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! Look at that, it worked. 1:30, and it is time for a new religion, indeed. Wow, thanks very much. Seems to be a lot of interest in this topic. Christoph Quarch was on stage here on Monday in a session on otherness, and yesterday he held a session on play in one of our smaller rooms. So he's obviously a very multifaceted, multiversed philosopher covering all kinds of topics: otherness, play, and today, religion. So Christoph is author of several books, and he's also one of the few philosophers who actually have a very strong spiritual propensity. So he spent time with the Dalai Lama, interviewed the Dalai Lama. He also interviewed the shaman of the Eskimos, Anak. He is the program director of the Protestant Church Day in Germany. And he's just been working and researching a lot of topics of spirituality and how they relate to philosophy. And he is here with us today with a very, very straightforward, clear argument, which might be surprising. And it is, we need a new religion. Please welcome Christoph Quarch.
Thank you, Tim, for the kind introduction, and hello to everyone. I have to confess I'm pretty excited because, it's a very beautiful audience tonight, or today. It's a house of beauty, obviously, and that's great to know. Well, I'm also excited because I've never done this talk before. So you're participants of a world premiere today. And in a foreign language, English is not my mother tongue, it's always a bit difficult. So I hope I will do it anyway. And by the way, I don't know whether this technique will work, but we'll have a try. So the topic is a new religion. And as Tim mentioned, I really hold that we are in bad need of a new religion. And what I actually want to do is to tell you why this is my confession. And next, what might be a new religion. So, to start, I would like to present some preliminary quotes, just to somehow frame my talk. The first one is from D.H. Lawrence. You probably know him as a novelist, writer of the most famous scandal novel, Lady Chatterley's Lover, which was prohibited in England for several years. And Lawrence once wrote, "Vitally, the human race is dying. It is like a great uprooted tree with its roots in the air." And now the most crucial sentence: "We must plant ourselves again in the universe." Why this quote? Because it indicates the importance of our issue. It's about planting ourselves again in the universe, bringing our roots back to solid ground. I took this quote because of the topic of roots, because I really hold that in order to enter into a new epoch of human history, we have to be very well rooted in our own history, rooted in the past, rooted in the thoughts that wise people who were here on earth before us already mentioned, because they are such an incredible treasure, not only in our European history of philosophy and of culture and civilization, but also in other parts of the world. As Tim mentioned, I worked a lot with indigenous people, and I know that there's an incredible treasure of wisdom. But anyway, I will focus today on the Western tradition because I was educated in this field, and therefore don't wonder if I will present to you a lot of witnesses of my issue. Unfortunately, but this has got to do something with our European tradition. It's only male thinkers, so please excuse me for that. It has to do something with the Western tradition. But I would like to go back to our past, to ancient Greece, to former thinkers, because we need this solid soil underneath our feet in order to grow into a new future. So, D.H. Lawrence, great quote. The next quote is from this guy, Friedrich Schlegel, German author from the 18th century, and he had a very good, let's say, ambition. He said, I intend to establish a new religion. Why this quote? For two reasons. First reason, by this, Schlegel indicated, how do you call it, the cruising altitude we have to choose in order to face the challenges of our period. It was written, the word I quoted, in the year 1795. It was only a couple of years after the French Revolution. And we all know the French Revolution, to the course of Western history, really was a disruptive situation. The old world was lying in ruins after 1789. And young intellectuals all over Europe, they tried to figure out how a new epoch of European civilization might look like. And Schlegel said, the only thing we have to do right now in this disruptive situation is to establish a new religion. So this is a cruising altitude, which I think we actually need today again, because we are in a very disruptive situation as well. Now, it's not the change from the old aristocratic political system to a democratic or republican political system. Now, actually, we are experiencing the huge shift from the analogous world to the digital world. And in this crucial, disruptive situation, I suppose we actually need a new religion. By the way, Schlegel found a lovely term for the new religion he wanted to establish, namely Romanticism. Romantic. He is the inventor of Romanticism. And I thought it's worth mentioning this because we are here in the House of Beautiful Business, which was established by the Romantic Business Society. So he is the guy who created the term Romanticism, which brought us together here somehow. So now the question, however, is religion. This is definitely a huge word. So the question is, a new religion, why? Let me first focus on new. Why do we need a new religion? For a very simple reason, which was very well identified by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who in 1882 wrote down his very famous quote, God is dead. God is dead. And this was his diagnosis of the modern world. We are living in a world which can be described as a world in which God is dead. When Nietzsche was talking about God, however, he thought about the God which was preached and promoted by the so-called monotheistic religions such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So it was his conviction that this monotheistic God, this theistic idea of a divine person which is ruling the universe, had come to an end. But this meant even more in the understanding of Nietzsche. What he really wanted to say is that the death of God caused a loss of any common moral or metaphysical framework. God was not only a kind of divine person which was worshipped in churches and temples, but it was also the chiffre, the symbol for morality and metaphysics. So morality and metaphysics came to an end when God died. This was Nietzsche's basic conviction. And because of the loss of a moral and metaphysical framework, a situation had come to happen which he called a vacuum of meaning. People, after the death of God, do not know exactly anymore what it's all for. What's the reason of their existence? What's the significance of their existence? And therefore, we all had to establish or to invent new paradigms, new framework, new narratives, new ideas of how to organize our common life. Actually, we can say in the beginning of the 21st century, we are really living in a secular world, in a world in which God had died. We can also figure what this means by another quote from a German author called Novalis. This was his artistic name. He was called Friedrich von Hardenberg. And he wrote down in 1797, "Where gods are gone, their ghosts will dwell." Ghosts or demons. And I suppose this is actually what happened in the period after the death of God. We got a new government by demons or by ghosts. What am I talking about? About these four key demons of our modern times. I call them economism, dataism, reductionism, and transhumanism. Why are these demons? I will try to explain you. First, economism. What do I mean by economism? Economism is not economy. Yes, very important point. There's nothing wrong with economy. Economy is very important for us. Economy helped us to live in a prosperous, flourishing world. And for about 200 years, economy really was a driving force for the human development. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with economy. Economism means a kind of mindset which tries to colonize every field of human practice by economical parameters and terms and criteria. That is true for our health system, for the education system, for social work, all spheres of human existence, which in my understanding should not be dominated by an economical mindset which always asks for criteria such as productivity, prosperity, profitability, and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. So the danger of economism is that it tends to reduce us as human beings to pure consumers, producers, or users. I don't know how many times you have heard that you are nothing else but a user or a consumer, but you are more. And this is what matters to me. Second point, reductionism. Reductionism means a kind of scientific paradigm which reduces human existence to all the things which can be measured by technological means. Our physics, our biochemistry, our genetic material, all that stuff. But it completely denies that there are other dimensions of human existence, such as our ancestors called the soul or the spirit, or let's say, yes, these are two very important terms in my understanding. So when we live in a reductionist paradigm, we deny these dimensions of human being. Dataism is a term which was not invented by me, but by, I think he's called Yuval Noah Harari. So you probably know him, the author of the bestseller book Homo Deus. And Harari pointed out, it was a very intelligent diagnosis of what's happening in our world today, in my understanding, that the driving force behind the incredible evolution of IT technology is a semi-religious movement. Because what the actual philosophy of the Silicon Valley preaches is that we humans will be capable to, let's say, to take over the former monopole of God by 3 points: being almighty, knowing everything, and being immortal. These are the 3 driving forces of the Silicon Valley philosophy, at least when in the case that Harari is right, but I suppose he actually is. But what happens by this? Humans become reduced to data and to algorithms. We are nothing more than genetic algorithms if this philosophy was ever true. Well, transhumanism, I suppose in the last days we heard a lot about it. In my understanding, transhumanism is one of the demons as well because it reduces humans to everlasting artifacts. We are designed, or we design ourselves by technological terms. To last forever is something which is true for technological products, but definitely not for creatures which were made of flesh and blood. So I suppose these are the 4 demons of our time. What are the consequences of the governance of the 4 demons, of the ghosts? Life is injured. Mother Earth is sweating. I mean, this is poetry, however, but what am I talking about? I'm talking about climate change and global warming. I suppose this is one of the severe challenges we actually have to face in the 21st century. And it is definitely closely connected with the governance of the demons I was talking about. The oceans are contaminated. Lately, we had the news that Austrian scientists and researchers found rests of plastic waste within the inner organs of human beings. So pollution and contamination of nature or right now reached our own body. And I mean, this is another injury of life itself. And last week I've been to a conference in Germany in which one of the most of the leading German scholars or scientists on the field of psychosomatic medicine gave a talk, and he told us that Germany, generally speaking, is sick on a mental level, on a psychological level. Let's say the line of psychological sickness from the year 2000 onward rises in a linear way. So it's already reached an amount which is alarming. So these are the consequences of the governance of the age of the demons. Probably Martin Heidegger was right when he said in 1966, only a God can serve us. Only God can save us. He said this after he mentioned before that in his understanding, philosophy will not be capable to trigger a shift in the development of human culture, because he held that the new science in 1966, the new science of Kybernetics, you say in English? Kybernetics will be the leading science of future times. And then he said, only a God can save us. Well, when I'm accurately listening to your thoughts, I can hear this question. A God? Who? In God's name, who is God? And I think this is a pretty tough question. But nevertheless, I will try to give you an answer. Again, I have to call a witness and to lend his words, namely the theologian Paul Tillich, who wrote in the 1950s, God is what unconditionally concerns you. And I suppose this is a brilliant definition of what God is, because it is completely free from any idea of a personal God which is living beyond the skies. It is completely free from any kind of dogmatism or morality. It only deals with the effect God has on you, and by which you can easily find out who is your God, namely the one or the thing which unconditionally concerns you. What does it mean? First, I repeat, God is not a person, but God is something like compressed, personalized meaning. You know, what really makes sense to you, what really is significant for you on an existential level, which you can't deny, which you feel, this is telling me something. This has got to say something to me. This is your God. It is the ultimate resource of meaning. And by this, it is beyond good and evil. When we talk about religion, we should put aside these terms. Religion is definitely not about morality. Traditional religion was very much about morality, but we all know where it led to genocide, to torture, to very bad things, however. Now, I suppose God, when we understand it by the way that Paul Tillich suggested, has got nothing to do with morality, with good and evil. And it is beyond confession. You don't have to be a believer. You only have to be a person which knows that there is something which really ultimately concerns you. So, when we understand God in this way, we can say God is whatever brings you alive. Now, philosophy is the art of questioning. Next question. Aliveness, why this? And what the hell is aliveness? You know what happens now? I invite another witness to speak to us, namely Plato. Now we have to go very far back in the history of humans, of European thinking. Plato gave us a very, very simple, but I think very powerful definition of the divine. He said, life is God. And he also said, God is the measure of everything. And when we put together these two sentences, we can easily say, life is the measure of everything. So what does it mean? It means, in my understanding, aliveness is the very essence of life. What is aliveness? It's very difficult to explain, and mainly in a language which is not your mother tongue. But we can say that aliveness is something which we can call the principle of nature. Aliveness is a miracle which is in charge of keeping the world together somehow. You know, it is quite a miracle that there are creatures which are born, which grow, which flourish and blossom, and which disappear again, which die. But there is a process which keeps all that together, and there is an invisible force which holds all this process of growing and of vanishing together. Therefore, my suggestion is to say that aliveness is a principle of nature and it directs the process of growth. Important issue which already the ancient Greeks noticed is that growth of living things follow a certain tendency, or they are directed towards a target, towards a goal. Namely, whatever comes to be alive has a tendency to flourish, to grow, to carry fruit, to present itself within the world in an individual way, uncomparable with anything else. Look at all these individual faces over here. Look at the individual leaves at a simple olive tree. Everything life creates is individual. And it is a variation, you can say, on the general issue of being alive. We are all, let's say, variations of the huge symphony of life which surrounds us from every part of the universe. So, therefore, I suppose that aliveness is, or at least should be, the very core, the key issue of a new religion. You can also say, in the understanding of Paul Tillich I presented to you, aliveness is a future God. It should be the future God if we want to challenge, or if we want to face the challenges which are waiting for us in the 21st century. Now, religion, what is this? I mean, religion is a very big term as well, and I suppose most of you have their own associations with the term of religion. Some think of the tradition in which they were educated, some think of perhaps fundamentalism, which is spread all over the world. Again, I would like to offer you a definition of religion which is quite unusual, quite uncommon, and which probably helps us to understand in a better way why a new religion could make sense for all of us. This definition is a bit old again. It's given by another of the protagonists of the Romanticism movement in Germany, namely the theologian Friedrich Schleiermacher, who defined religion as a sense and sensibility for the infinite. In German, it's Sinn und Geschmack für das Unendliche. Sense and sensibility for the infinite. As you easily mention, it's got to do nothing with dogmatism or morality. It's not about that. It's about reconnection. This is the literal meaning of religio. It's very important to understand this. The Latin word religio means reconnection. Reconnection with what? Reconnection with aliveness. What does this mean? It means that a religious person reconnects itself with its own potentials, with the unlived life which is still dwelling deep within your soul. There's so much potential within you which so far hasn't come to the surface. But religion is helping you to unfold your potentials because it reconnects you with the infinite resources of life itself. And therefore, it helps you to become a real, uncomparable, beautiful individuum. By this we can say religion is all about ensoulment. I never knew that this word in English exists, but I found out it definitely does. In German, it's beseelt. You all know this very peculiar state of mind when you feel ensouled, you feel like a real living creature, you feel inspired, you feel that you reach a higher energy level. If a religion will not bring you to a higher energy level, it's not worth being called religion. The reconnection with the potential of infinite life resources within yourself should energize you, and it should inspire you. Therefore, I think religion is all about ensoulment, and it's all about inspiration. Religion, the key purpose of religion should be to make our souls flourish. And you know from biology, what flourishes after that will carry fruit, will give itself to the others, connect with the others. This was the issue of 2 days before. Anyway, flourish, what does that mean? My suggestion, again, I quote someone, namely Viktor Frankl, a famous psychiatrist and physicist from Vienna, Austria, of the 20th century. He taught to be human means to strive for meaning. To strive for meaning, what is this? Let me try to explain it to you. I suppose, and this is mainly the idea which Viktor Frankl promoted, the very purpose of being a human is nothing else but to be fully human. That means to unfold the potentials you carry within you. Not to be satisfied with a low level of existence. I mean, you can do this. There's nothing wrong with it. But somehow it's a pity if you live far beyond your own potentials. But this is something which happens all the time. Wherever I look, I see beautiful human beings which seem to be somehow underneath their own potentials. So the very purpose of being human means to be fully human, to be what you can really be, to be a real human being. And what does it mean? It means to experience the whole spectrum of life, this broad range which comes from grief, from mourning, from sadness, from pain, to joy, to cherishing, to being completely happy. All that as life. And all this is precious. And to be a human being means to know all this. And the deeper we dive into our own emotions, into our own experiences, the more human we are. Viktor Frankl said, to be fully human means to say yes anyway. You have to know that Viktor Frankl wrote this on the background of his biography, which was quite a tough one, because Viktor Frankl was born Jewish, and he was arrested by the Nazis and put to a concentration camp for several years of his life. Concentration camp in southern Germany, and after that he was one of the very, very few prisoners who survived this. He was liberated by the American soldiers in April 1945, I suppose. And after having been liberated, he wrote a famous book, which is called in German Trotzdem Ja zum Leben sagen, which is saying yes to life despite of what happened before. And in this book, he describes that even under the worst conditions you will ever face, namely in a concentration camp, it is possible to find meaning in your life. You can say yes to life anyway, in the case that you are willing to enter into a conversation with what is happening around you. Having the capacity and let's say, the ability to let other people, other situations, other things touch you. To understand that everything has got to say something to you, because this is life. So, when we refer to Viktor Frankl, and I think is really a brilliant author on that issue, we can say that to be fully human means to accept that we are part of a huge conversation we call life. And I repeat, this conversation may cause trouble to you. It may hurt you. It may injure you. But nevertheless, it is precious because it allows you to make the experience of being fully human. This is the thing we have to understand in order to become fully human. Well, there's a new term, conversation. what does this mean again? And again, I want to present a quote of an author which I do like very much. In fact, I have to confess that I love him. It's Friedrich Hölderlin, German poet. And he put it to very simple words. He said, "We are nothing but conversation." To be human means to be a conversation. To be a conversation within the huge conversation we call nature, or we can call life, we can call the symphony of everything. What is conversation? Conversation consists of three factors which are very important. The first one, which definitely is the first one, and everything else depends on the ability to listen, to pay attention to what's going on, to pay attention to what life has to offer to you, of what people say to you, to be aware and receptive for reality. This is a core quality of any conversation. Without this ability, you will never be able to converse with anyone else or with nature. You will not be able to understand what the slight breeze of the air in springtime means to you, what the pouring rain in Lisbon has to say to you. You will be blind for everything. Therefore, attention, receptiveness, mindfulness, I think we were talking about mindfulness yesterday, the capacity to listen what actually is, to be open-hearted and open-minded for reality. This, in my understanding, is a core competence we all need in order to be religious in the way I tried to explain it to you today. So, you will not be able to converse with someone else if you are only receptive. I mean, it's beautiful to be passive and to take all that you can get, but you also have to give something back. You have to respond. And to respond to what life itself has to say to us means to be aware of our responsibility. Responsibility is all about giving back what we have gained. By practicing, by action, by showing up ourselves as individual answers to what the universe has to tell us. This is our responsibility, to become individuals who create, who generate meaning in order to respond to the meaningfulness of the universe that is around us. And third point, which is important for any kind of conversation, listen, answer. But we always have to keep in mind that there is a certain purpose within any conversation, namely to understand each other, namely to come to a point of accordance. And this is a wonderful thing. All of you know. You know, when you have a dialogue with someone else, and I suppose it happens here all the time, sometimes you come to a point where you say, how wonderful is this? It's completely inspiring. It's fantastic because you realize that there is a state of accordance between the two of you. You come to a point where you can say, we understand each other. We have concordance. We have a state of harmony. And this is beautiful. When this happens, you are happy. And you can say, great, wonderful. But nobody of the two dialogue partners can say, well, I've done this. It's my work. I was the one who generated understanding. No, it is something which happens when you converse with the other one. It has got to do something with this beautiful movement between two people. It happens in the space between two individuals. There's a place where the miracle of understanding takes place. And I suppose all of us, we have a very, very tough longing for understanding and accordance. There's a driving force within us, the ancient Greeks called eros. This is all eros is about. Eros is about to realize harmony, beauty, accordance, and understanding in the conversation of us as individuals with the world we're living in. So, remember, the purpose of life is aliveness itself. And the purpose of being human is to be fully human. Therefore, almost the final quote by Martin Buber, all true life is conversation. In German, alles wirkliche Leben ist Begegnung. All true life is conversion. And this, in my understanding, is a key sentence of the new religion I think we should try to establish in order to face the challenges of the 21st century, in order to gain a new framework which allows us to deal with technological improvement, with new technologies, which give us a kind of criteria which allow us to say what we actually want and what we actually do not want. All true life is conversation. So, the new religion we are in need of is conversation with what really is, conversation with something we can call the sacred being of our world. So if this is true, how about easing into the conversation? And by this, I come to a final quote with which I would like to finish my brief talk. It is a poem, and I think in a house of beautiful business, it makes sense to bring here some kind of poetry. It was done by an American author I very, very much appreciate, and I had the honor and privilege to translate some of his poems to German in the last years. He's called David White, and the poem I would like to present to you is called Everything is Waiting for You. Unfortunately, I can't tell it by heart, so I have to read it, but nevertheless. Everything is waiting for you. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. This is a big mistake. And most of us, in our narcissism and our egocentricity, we commit this great mistake. We pretend that we can act the drama as if we were alone. As if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely, even you, at times, have felt the grand array, the swelling presence, and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window ledge grants you freedom. Alertness is a hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and to invite you. And even the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream letter to divinity. So, put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. That's the crucial sentence. Ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even if it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. Everything is inviting you to ease into the conversation, the religious conversation, which will reconnect you with your very essence, with your very potentials of being a true human being, which means to grieve, to be happy, to be joyful, to have it all, but to be alive. That's what I was talking about. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we still have 20 minutes. And as religion is a very challenging issue or topic, I'm very excited to know what you're thinking about it. And therefore, I would like to invite you to give your comments, to ask your questions, to utter your critique, or whatever you think should be shared with the other ones here in the living room. The floor is open. So is there anyone who wants to, or who has the courage to start with his comment or his question or his critique? Please, there's a mic for you.
Hey, I wonder if you say that life is a conversation with everything that surrounds you, basically, and
Yes.
everyone that surrounds you. I still had the feeling that, let's say, new technology and let's call it new technology is not necessarily part. Is it part of that? Because like, is the conversation with those things that have the notion of
good point
being not nature or being not truly human? Is that still
yes.
Can you still find this true love or this true kind of humanity in operating your phone?
This is a very crucial question. I mean, the question is whether technology in itself has got to tell you something, whether it has a capacity to tell you something which really concerns you, which is about your own, let me use the old notion, about your own soul. Of course, we can use technology as media to transport crucial messages which will have the capacity to inspire you or to besoul you. Technology in itself, I suppose, will not have the capacity. It might even be an obstacle to speaking in a real existential way. Because in my understanding, our own aliveness can only be triggered when there is something alive in which we can be resonant, with which we can be resonant with. So, for instance, this can be a piece of art, because a piece of art is somehow the product of a feeling and living soul who wanted to express itself by the piece of art. It can also be a plant or an animal or pouring rain. Everything is possible. I suppose it's much more difficult when we have to deal with information which is transported to us by digital media, for instance. And that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to digital media. But when it comes to the crucial question, what do we need to become real humans, I would say we don't need it. What we actually need is to converse with living things or with expressions of aliveness. So, therefore, I suppose we should try, or when we really have the intention to establish a new religion, the most important thing to do, which is in the same moment the most easy thing we can do, is to create spaces in which people can look into the eyes and in which they can speak in a deliberate way about the issues of life itself. What it means to be alive, what we expect when death is knocking on our door. When we talk about these questions, and we take ourselves a little bit time to share our thoughts on this, I suppose the spirit of life itself will have the capacity to enter into our world again. And then we will be able to generate the framework which allows us to deal with our technologies in a good way, which serves the purpose of aliveness. So this is my idea concerning this. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with technology. But we should not expect that technology will improve our humanity. That's my point. Thank you for the question. I hope it was an answer.
I mean, yeah, maybe one quick follow-up. I think it's also maybe important to be aware of what you're doing, right? I mean, this poem that you said, that you quoted, that was also, going through a door or the stair.
Of course.
Can be something that enriches your life, and I wouldn't necessarily call a door an expression of life. It's also an artificial artifact, if you want, right?
Yes.
Or a staircase. But if you see it and if you awarely walk it up and down, and you kind of do it not just because whatever, dully, or I don't know if that's the right word.
Yes, of course.
If you do it aware, then it becomes interesting, and I think that can still be transformed to using technology in an aware way, right? Yeah.
True, definitely. I mean, what really matters is to be open-hearted and open-minded, and to be attentive, you say, to what's going on there, and whatever is generated by humans in order to, let's say, to make them be alive is an expression of aliveness. and has got to say something to you. Can be a symbol or an invitation or whatsoever. But the capacity to listen and to be open-minded is the most basic competence we need in order to be fully alive. So, lots of other hands. So, can anyone help me?
Thank you for your talk.
Welcome.
For me, the word religion sometimes conjures up a man-made power and money, business, and sometimes destruction.
Yes,
because
sure.
of the things that it has caused. I'm asking you why you've chosen the name religion. Why not maybe a new community?
Yes.
Why have you actually chosen religion?
I have to repeat myself in order to indicate the cruising altitude. Because, you know, when we look back to the history of humanity, religion was the key framework in which people organized their communities and by which they understood themselves. So I have no problem with putting the term religion aside. But perhaps it's easier in the first step to redefine it and to bring to our consciousness the original meaning of the word, namely reconnection. For by this we can understand what once was the very purpose of the old traditional religions which caused so much damage for humanity in the history. But there was a true core even in this huge power structures and hierarchical structures which had been generated by former generations. There was something true in it, otherwise it would never have been successful. And it was that in the very beginning, these religious mindsets had the capacity to reconnect people with the infinite life resources within themselves. But then it all was overlapped by other issues such as power and anything, you know. Yes, therefore, it doesn't depend on the concept of religion, but it might be helpful to keep it in mind because I think it's a kind of honesty, you know. It is really about talking what matters to people and what gives them an ultimate framework in order to understand themselves and to interpret the words they are living in. Therefore, I think it's more, how do you say, honest to use this term than trying to speak about spirituality or communities or that stuff. It all is closely connected with each other. But I hold, it's perhaps I like it because it's even a bit provocative to speak about religion. Yes, sure. I'm.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Thank you very much for such a brilliant talk. It was really fascinating and insightful. So my question is, does a religion need a figurehead in order to spread? And if the answer is yes, what do you think that figurehead might look like?
I don't think that it needs a figurehead. Definitely not. Perhaps the new religion will be unique by not having any figurehead at all. What a religion needs, in my understanding, is community. That's our issue. People who gather because they have a common vision, the vision of being fully human. And that's enough. I would have a bad feeling if there were people who consider themselves as the leaders or the high priests or whatsoever of this new religion. I think in the 21st century, if it really makes sense to talk about a new religion, it must be a new religion which somehow is contemporary. You know, we are living in a decentralized world, and we understood that life itself requests, to a certain degree, decentralization. And if a new religion has the purpose to trigger aliveness, we should be very careful not to establish structures which may stop it again. So, no figureheads.
Thank you.
So, it's both a question and a commentary. So I noticed that you only mentioned, for the most part, actually only men. So there was a procession.
I apologize for this in the beginning.
But it's no need to apologize. It's more of just calling into question whether or not in the conversation women are included, whether in the conversation people who are not from Germanic traditions are included. So in asking that question, if you look at the very idea of religion or religio that you seem to be pointing it out, it seems to me that it's very foundational, as opposed to what you, and even the very word conversation you use the Martin Buber. I think Begegnung, it's usually encounter. So I was curious also, why did you choose to translate Begegnung as conversation as opposed to encounter? So just, there's two questions. One is the sort of tradition that you embed yourself in, and the other one is the translation.
Yes. Well, as mentioned in the beginning, I definitely embed myself in the Western philosophy, and this is, however, a male tradition. For several reasons I don't have to inquire into, I suppose. Well, but of course, in this idea, everyone is included. Every human being, also nature in general, also animals, in my understanding. I mean, everything being alive is part of the conversation. When on one of the last slides, perhaps you remember, I presented these 3 different factors of conversation. And they were somehow taken from the philosophy of Plato again, who I have to confess is my main dialogue partner in philosophy. And in his dialogue, or his fantastic text called The Symposium, which is the banquet in English, he's talking about eros, about the passionate love. We all know when we've ever fallen in love for one time. Then we know what eros really means. And he says, eros, this is mythological thinking, however, eros has 2 parents. This is not that surprising, but he says there is a mother and a father. And the mother he calls, so in Greek it's pinia, and it's again difficult to translate it, but in my understanding it means something like the capacity to be receptive. This is, traditionally speaking, a female quality in the ancient Greek mindset. And the male aspect of conversation is to respond, to be the active part. Anyway, we don't have to share these mythological categories. But nevertheless, I suppose it indicates that both the female and the male quality of human existence are absolutely needed in order to come to conversation. And each of us, either male or female, need to be able to be receptive and to have the courage to be responsible. We need both these qualities. And therefore, I think when we come to these gender terms, a conversation, in my understanding, is a concept which somehow links the male and the female aspect of human existence in a very tough and sincere way. So in order to become fully human, we have to be both, male and female. Perhaps with slightly different degrees, but nevertheless, I think it makes sense to have these 2 qualities in life.
Thank you again. I would like to adapt to your question, actually. Does not religion need rules that we all agree on? Rules that we might not like, but that nevertheless give guidance? And there are some religions that gain very fresh and new participants just because they feel they get better and stricter guidance than in the world without rules. Or other question would be, are we grown up enough as humanity to live without rules?
Well, I suppose religion doesn't need no rules at all. It only needs a key idea. My image is the image of our solar system. You know, there's a gravitation center in the middle of the whole system, and if the gravitation center has enough energy, it will keep together not the universe, but the whole solar system. And when there is really spirit or the reconnection to the divine dimension of life in the center of a religion, you don't need a set of rules anymore. All you need is the reconnection to that center. And then you can converse with each other, you can converse with nature. Definitely, this will cause a certain kind of what we call ethos. It's somehow by a kind of natural or almost automatical way, your behavior will be shaped by this gravitational spot I was talking about. You know, when you are, let's say, a passionate lover with an erotic passion for aliveness, you will not. You definitely have to interfere wherever life is tortured or misused. So this is, let's say, a natural outcome of the key idea of aliveness as a very meaning of being a human being. So it has, let's say, in other words, it has an ethical or moral impact, a religion, a new religion, but I think it definitely does not need a set of 10 commandments or of a set of laws or whatsoever. Yes, I think, suppose neither front figures nor moral commandments are required as long as a religion is still alive. When the god of a religion starts to die, in that moment we need dogmas, we need moral commandments, and we need hierarchical systems. And this is what happened to almost all the huge religious systems that mankind ever invented. But I think the kind of religion that I wanted to share with you doesn't need that.
We have time probably for one more question.
Yes. Depends on the question.
Yes.
And the answer. So true.
I was wondering, with this religion, do you think that if it catches on and people start adopting this as a religion, that they can replenish the earth and replenish humanity?
That's my hope. That's the quote of Heidegger, only God can save us. I mean, I would say only a religion can serve us, can save us, mainly if it is a religion which perhaps is not even considered to be a religion, but a new narrative, a new mindset, a different mindset, a mindset which really focuses on the miracle of life. And if we are all passionate lovers of life itself, then I hope that we will gain the strength and the energy to solve the immense problems we will have to face in the near future. I don't believe in any kind of moral appeals anymore. We had it all. Yeah? We know everything. We have enough knowledge to shift our mindsets, but we don't do it because, let's say, a positive inspiration, a positive ensoulment is lacking. I suppose human behavior is not that much motivated or stimulated by commandments or by needs, but it's much more stimulated by being passionate for something, by being inspired for something. And therefore I hold we need a vision of what life really is and what is our purpose as a human being and as humanity in general, in order to how do you call this, to pull back your shirt and to start to work and to make the world a better place. But it's neither done by technology, nor by economy, nor by morality, but it's only done by a beautiful vision which triggers the erotic energy within us, which makes us stick together and change the world. It's the only way I can see.
What?
Thank you. Thank you.
I can hardly imagine a better place for these final words than the House of Beautiful Business. Thank you so much.
That's why we are here. Thank you.
No, thank you, Christoph. Seriously.
Thanks. Thank you.
Quick spoiler alert, I think Christoph will also be part of an impromptu session later today in the Office of Exponential Humanity at...
I think it's in the museum.
Maybe it's in the museum.
I think it's in the museum.
In the Museum of Beautiful Business, around five-ish, something like that. So
6.
6. Okay,
Around
all right.
6.
Now,
It is. Let me mention one.
it's a very good thing that,
I will explain what it's all about. It's yesterday I had this brief session on playing, and I was talking about a framework for conversation which is called dialogue. It was invented by David Bohm. Perhaps you know it, an American professor for quantum physics. And somebody asked me whether we can have a brief experience with that in a kind of experimental space. And our beautiful friends from the museum declared themselves to be willing to host this. And so at 6 o'clock, those who are interested in it are invited to join us.
wonderful. And meanwhile, I clearly showed a lack of data knowledge about this session. So kind of it's good that we have a data track now starting more or less in 30 minutes here with a masterclass on personal data. Enjoy the afternoon.